The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles, under a crystal dome that showed the stars beyond. Thousands of alien beings filled the floating seats, their voices creating a low hum that never stopped. For 3,000 years they had ruled the known galaxy. They decided which planets could trade, which species could travel between stars, and which worlds would live or die today. They were talking about myths. Commander Zexstar of the Vorthon Empire stood at the speaking platform. His forearms moved as he talked, and his purple skin glowed with excitement. "The human stories are just tales for children," he said to the crowd. "No species could be that savage and still build starships." The other council members made sounds of agreement. The crystalline hive sent musical notes through the air. The gas dancers swirled in patterns that meant they agreed. The machine collective flashed lights in perfect timing. "The old records speak of impossible things," Zexstar continued. "They say humans could survive on a world with violent weather, poisonous air, and deadly animals. They say these creatures would fight even when they knew they would lose. Say humans would rather die than surrender." Laughter filled the Great Hall. The idea seemed funny to most of the council members. Every civilized species knew that survival meant finding the easiest path. Why would anyone choose to suffer when they could choose comfort? "But the stories also say they had ships," said Advisor Kethlin from the Peaceful Collective. Her voice was soft and worried. "The ancient texts mention human vessels that could cross the void between galaxies." Stories X-Star waved all four arms. "If humans were real, we would have found them by now. We have explored every corner of the galaxy. There are no savage worlds with blue skies and liquid water oceans. There are no creatures that choose war over peace." Far away from the council hall, on the edge of civilized space, the human colony ship New Horizon was sending its final message. To Earth, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the alien vessels surround his ship. His brown hair was going gray after 20 years in space, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "This is Captain Morrison of the New Horizon." He spoke into his communication device. "We are under attack by unknown vessels. They appear to be collecting our people rather than destroying us. I repeat, they are taking prisoners, Lieutenant." Amy Carter looked up from her station. Her red hair was tied back, and her green eyes showed the fear they all felt. "Captain, they're not responding to any of our attempts to communicate. They're just ... taking people." Chief Engineer Pete Collins wiped grease from his hands. He was a big man with calloused fingers from years of fixing machines. "Sir, I can overload the engines. We could take some of them with us." Morrison shook his head. "No, Pete. We need to survive long enough to warn Earth. Amy, send everything we have about these aliens on the emergency channel. Include all our scanner readings." Dr. Lisa Warren, the ship's science officer, looked pale as she studied her instruments. She was young for a deep space mission, but her mind was one of the best Earth had produced. "Captain, I'm picking up their communications. They're not speaking to each other like we do. It's more like they're all parts of the same mind." "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "They share thoughts instantly across their entire fleet. When one ship learns something, they all know it immediately. And Captain ... Lisa's voice grew quiet. They're talking about us like we're animals. They want to study us. The alien ships were beautiful in a cold way. They looked like enormous crystals that caught starlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Each ship was 3 times larger than the New Horizon, and there were dozens of them," Captain Amy said. "I'm getting a signal from Earth. Admiral Kane Phillips wants to speak with you." The face of Admiral Phillips appeared on the main screen. He was an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in the colonial wars and helped establish humanity's first deep space colonies. "Jake, we received your message," Phillips said. "How many ships are you facing?" "At least 40, sir." "Maybe more. They've been hurting us for 3 days, forcing us toward this system. I think they want us alive." Phillips nodded grimly. "We've lost contact with 7 other colony ships in that region. All went silent after sending similar messages about being captured rather than destroyed." "Sir, what are your orders?" "Survive, Jake. Learn everything you can about these aliens. We need to know what we're facing."
That's
The communication cut off as alien beams struck the new horizon. The ship shook, but the beams were designed to disable, not destroy. Morrison felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders. His crew looked to him for guidance, just as they had during the voyage from Earth. Pete, shut down all non-essential systems. Make it look like we're more damaged than we are. Amy, prepare the emergency data cores. If they board us, we need to make sure information gets back to Earth somehow. As the alien ships moved closer, Morrison thought about the stories his grandfather used to tell. Stories about humans who faced impossible odds and found ways to win. Stories about ancestors who crossed dangerous oceans in wooden ships, who survived in frozen lands and burning deserts, who built cities in places where nothing should be able to live. The Galactic Council thought humans were myths. Maybe they were right. Maybe the idea of a species that chose the hard path was just a story. But Morrison had seen humans do impossible things. He had watched colonists build farms on airless worlds. He had seen engineers create machines from scrap metal and determination. He had known soldiers who kept fighting long after any sane person would have given up. The alien boarding beam activated, and Morrison felt the familiar tingle of a matter transporter. As the light surrounded him, he smiled grimly. The aliens wanted to study humans. They were about to learn that some myths were real. On Earth, Admiral Phillips stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with screens showing star charts, ship positions, and communication logs. Officers moved between stations, coordinating humanity's response to the first alien contact in their history. "Sir," reported Commander Helen Brooks, receiving similar distress calls from colonies in 17 different systems. The pattern is always the same. Large fleets of crystal ships, capture rather than destruction, complete communication. Silence afterward. Phillips studied the reports. After 40 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this felt wrong. If these aliens were so advanced, why were they being so careful with human prisoners? "Helen, activate the Deep Space Monitoring Network. I want to know everything about these crystal ships, their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses." "Yes, sir." "What about the missing colonists?" Phillips looked at the star chart showing the locations of the attacks. The aliens were being systematic, working their way toward Earth's core systems. They had time to prepare, but not much. "We're going to get them back," he said quietly. "All of them. But first, we need to understand what we're really dealing with." In the depths of space, the crystal ships continued their work. Inside their holding cells, human prisoners sat in silence, watching their captors with curious eyes. The aliens had expected fear, panic, and despair. Instead, they found humans who observed, planned, and waited for their chance. The myths were about to become reality. Admiral Kane Phillips stood in the war room, staring at reports that made his blood run cold. In the past week, 23 human colonies had gone silent. The pattern was always the same. Crystal ships would appear, disable human vessels without destroying them, and take prisoners. And nothing but empty space where thriving communities used to be. "Sir, we have incoming transmission from the Outer Rim," reported Lieutenant Danny Ross. He was young, barely out of the academy, but his hands were steady as he worked the communication controls. It's from Captain Helen Brooks at New Denver Colony. Phillips knew Brooks well. She had served under him during the Titan Rebellion, where a handful of human ships had held off pirate fleets for 3 months. If anyone could handle first contact with hostile aliens, it was Helen. Brooks' face appeared on the main screen. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a military style, and her blue eyes showed the calm focus Phillips remembered from their battles. Together, behind her, alarm lights flashed red in the New Denver Command Center. "Admiral, we have 37 crystal ships approaching our position. They're moving in the same formation we've seen in the other attacks. Request immediate backup." Phillips felt his jaw tighten. New Denver was 6 days away from the nearest Earth fleet. "Helen, you know I can't get ships to you in time. What's your tactical situation? 6 patrol boats? 2 mining barges? We've converted to fighting ships, and about 300 colonists with more courage than sense." The good news is, we've had time to prepare. Phillips raised an eyebrow. Prepare how? Brooks smiled, and Phillips recognized the expression. It was the same look she'd had right before she'd led that impossible charge against the pirate flagship. Years ago. Well, sir, turns out farming equipment makes excellent improvised weapons when you know what you're doing. And these colonists have been digging tunnels and bunkers for the past year. New Denver isn't just a farm anymore. It's a fortress. The communication cut to static as the alien ships arrived at New Denver. Phillips turned to his staff officers. I want real-time monitoring of this engagement. Whatever happens here, we need to learn from it. At New Denver Colony, Captain Helen Brooks watched the crystal ships take their positions above the planet. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. Their formations were beautiful and precise, but there was something cold about them that made her skin crawl. Captain called out Sergeant Mike Torres from the Defense Center. He was a former Marine who'd come to New Denver looking for peace. Now he was back in the fight of his life. They're scanning us the same way they scanned the other colonies. Want me to light them up? Brooke shook her head. Not yet. Let them think we're just another helpless farming colony. Bobby, are our surprises ready? Bobby Chen, the colonies. Chief Engineer grinned from his position at the modified mining controls. Ma'am, every tunnel, every bunker, every farm building is wired and ready. These aliens want to collect humans? They're about to find out humans don't collect easy. The crystal ships began their attack pattern. Beams of energy struck the colony's main buildings, designed to disable rather than destroy. The aliens had learned from their previous captures that dead humans were less useful than living ones. What they hadn't learned was that humans were very good at pretending to be more hurt than they actually were. Now Brooke said quietly. The first surprise came from the grain silos. What looked like storage buildings suddenly opened, revealing missile launchers that the colonists had built for mining equipment. Dozens of rockets streaked toward the crystal ships. The second surprise came from the tunnels. Underground passages that had been dug for storm shelters suddenly became launch points for more missiles. The aliens had expected to face a few patrol boats. Instead, they found themselves under attack from the planet itself. The third surprise was the biggest one. The mining barges that had been floating dead in space suddenly came to life. Their hulls opened to reveal weapons that definitely weren't designed for mining rocks. Bobby, I thought you said the mining lasers weren't powerful enough to hurt their ships, Brooke said as she watched alien vessels spark and spin out of control. They're not, ma'am. Turns out if you wire 6 mining lasers together and overload them all at once, you get something that's definitely powerful enough. The crystal ships tried to adapt to the unexpected resistance. Their formations shifted, and they began targeting the hidden weapons positions. But for every gun they destroyed, 2 more appeared from new locations. On the flagship of the alien fleet, Commander Zexroth felt something he had never experienced before: confusion. His species had conquered 47 different worlds, and the pattern was always the same. Superior technology met inferior resistance. The inferior species surrendered or died. Simple. These humans were not following the pattern. Commander reported, his tactical officer. We have destroyed 63% of their obvious weapons. Positions, but they continue to produce new firing solutions from impossible locations. Impossible? Sir, they appear to be shooting at us from farm buildings, underground tunnels, and what our sensors identify as livestock shelters. Zexroth's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought in his species. Are you telling me that these humans have militarized their agricultural facilities? Yes, sir. Also, 3 of our ships report being attacked by what appear to be modified food transport vehicles. Through his ship's sensors, Zexroth watched a human flying machine. That was obviously designed for crop dusting make an attack run on one of his cruisers. The small craft should have been destroyed instantly, but the human pilot flew it like a fighter, using the planet's atmosphere and terrain in ways that made targeting nearly impossible. Sir, the tactical officer continued, we're also receiving reports that captured humans from other colonies are somehow communicating with these defenders. They appear to be sharing tactical information about our ship designs and weapons. This was impossible. Zexroth's species controlled all communication in this region of space. How were separated human groups coordinating their resistance? Commander, incoming message from the planet's surface. Captain Brooks appeared on the main screen, standing in what looked like a farm equipment warehouse. Behind her, humans of all ages worked frantically to prepare more weapons and defenses. "This is Captain Helen Brooks of New Denver Colony," she said calmly. "I'm speaking to whoever's in charge of those pretty crystal ships up there." Zexroth activated his translator and replied, "I am Commander Zexroth of the Galactic Enforcement Division. You will surrender immediately or face destruction." Brooks smiled. "See, that's where you made your first mistake. Should have opened with destruction. We know you want us alive, which means you need something from us. It gives us all the advantage we need. You cannot resist our superior technology indefinitely. Maybe not. But here's the thing about humans, Commander. We don't have to win indefinitely. We just have to make taking us cost more than it's worth." The battle continued for 18 hours. The aliens had expected to spend maybe 30 minutes collecting their new specimens. Instead, they found themselves in a grinding fight against an enemy that refused to follow any reasonable pattern of behavior. Every time they destroyed a human position, the humans would appear somewhere else. Every time they adapted to a human tactic, the humans would try something completely different. When their ships moved high to avoid ground-based weapons, humans and flying machines attacked from below. When they dropped low to eliminate the aircraft, ground weapons opened fire from new positions. Most confusing of all, the humans seemed to actually enjoy the fight. Their communications were filled with laughter, jokes, and what the alien translators identified as insults regarding maternal relationships. By the end of the first day, Zexroth had lost 6 ships and still hadn't captured a single human. His fleet was low on power, his crews were exhausted, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors show human reinforcements approaching. Multiple fleets, estimated arrival in 4 days." For the first time in his military career, Commander Zexroth gave an order he never thought he would give: all ships withdraw from engagement zone. Set course for Fleet Base 7. As the crystal ships retreated, Captain Brooks stood in the ruins of what had been New Denver's main street. Around her, colonists cheered and embraced. Had done something that no other species in the galaxy had ever accomplished. They had made the Galactic Enforcement Division retreat. "Ma'am," Sergeant Torres approached with a communication device. "Admiral Phillips wants to speak with you." Phillips' face appeared on the screen, and Brooks could see the amazement in his eyes. "Helen, the entire fleet command is watching the recordings of your engagement. How did you do it?" Brooks looked around at her people. Farmers, mechanics, teachers, and retired soldiers who had chosen to build something instead of destroy. Now they had proven that humans could fight just as well as they could farm. "We did what humans do, sir. We adapted. We improvised. And we didn't quit." Phillips nodded slowly. "Ellen, I'm promoting you to colonel and putting you in charge of colonial defense coordination. It looks like we're going to need a lot more New Denvers." General Marcus Stone had been waiting his entire life for this moment. For 30 years, he had prepared for the day when Earth would face an enemy from the stars. While other officers focused on colonial expansion and trade routes, Stone had built something different, something hidden, something that would make the aliens regret ever hearing the word human. Deep beneath the surface of Ceres, the largest asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, Stone stood in a command center that officially did not exist. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at stations monitoring fleets that were not supposed to be there. "Sir," reported Captain Ryan Hayes, commander of the Ghost Fleet. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who had spent 15 years living in the asteroid belt, learning to hide entire fleets inside hollowed-out rocks. "All units report. Ready. We have 47 ships disguised as mining operations. 32 vessels hidden in the ring systems of Saturn and Jupiter, and the deep space units are moving into position." Stone nodded. The aliens thought they were fighting scattered human colonies. They had no idea that Earth's military had been preparing for this war since the first colony ships left the solar system. What about Dr. Clark's special project? Lieutenant Colonel Beth Adams stepped forward. She commanded the sleeper fleets, ships that had been waiting in cold storage around the outer planets for decades. Tony says he's ready, sir. His team has been studying the alien communication networks from the prisoners' reports. He thinks he's found a way in. Doctor? Tony Clark looked up from his bank of computers. He was young, maybe 30, with messy brown hair and glasses. But his mind was one of the best Earth had produced. For the past month, he had been studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. General Clark said, his voice excited. These aliens are amazing at working together, but that's also their weakness. They share thoughts instantly across their entire fleet. I can hack into that network. You can feed them false information. Stone finished. Make them think our fleets are somewhere they're not. Better than that, sir. I can make them confused about their own positions. Imagine if half their fleet thought they were supposed to attack one target, while the other half thought they were supposed to attack somewhere completely different. Stone smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I'll do it. 3 days later, the alien fleet approached the Kepler system, where Earth had established one of its largest colony groups. Commander Zexroth led 200 crystal ships, largest force the Galactic Enforcement Division had ever assembled. After the disaster at New Denver, the High Command had decided to end human resistance with overwhelming force. Commander DC reported his tactical officer. We're detecting the expected human colony ships and defense platforms, approximately 20 vessels, mostly converted civilian craft. Zexroth studied the tactical display. This time, there would be no surprises. His ships would attack from multiple directions simultaneously. The humans would have nowhere to hide. Begin the attack. All ships, execute Formation 7. The crystal ships moved forward in perfect coordination. Energy beams lanced out toward the human positions. Several colony ships exploded, and the human defense platforms returned fire with their small weapons. Then something impossible happened. Ships appeared from nowhere. Dozens of them, emerging from asteroids that had been floating peacefully in space moments before. The rocks split open like flowers, revealing human warships that immediately opened fire on the alien fleet. Where did they come from? Zexroth demanded. Unknown, sir. Our sensors showed only normal asteroids in those positions. More ships appeared. From the gas giant's rings, what had looked like ice and rock formations suddenly came alive with human vessels that struck the alien fleet from behind. But the real shock came when Zexroth tried to coordinate his fleet's response. Half of his ships received orders to retreat toward the system's edge. The other half received orders to advance toward the planet. The two groups flew directly into each other. What is happening? Zexroth screamed. Our communication network appears to be compromised. Ships are receiving conflicting orders. On the human flagship, Captain Ryan Hayes watched the alien fleet tear itself apart. Ships that should have been working together were firing on each other. Formations that should have been coordinated were flying in random directions. Tony, you beautiful genius, Hayes said into his communicator. How long can you keep this up? Dr. Clark's voice crackled back from his hidden position on Ceres. As long as you need. I'm not just confusing their communications. I'm learning how their whole system works. Give me a few more hours and I might be able to shut down individual ships. The battle became a massacre, but not the one the aliens had planned. Human ships that had been hiding for years finally revealed themselves. The Ghost Fleet used tactics no military academy taught, striking from impossible angles and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Adams led her sleeper fleet in a maneuver that would be studied in military schools for generations. Her ships had been drifting in the outer system, looking like space debris. When the aliens focused on the inner battle, Adams brought her fleet around behind them at maximum speed. All ships, this is Beth Adams. Remember, we've been waiting 15 years for this moment. Make it count. The sleeper fleet struck like a hammer. Ships that had been powered down for years came to life, with engines running at full power and weapons fully charged. The aliens found themselves trapped between 3 different human fleets. all attacking with coordination that seemed impossible. Commander Zexroth watched his fleet fall apart around him. 200 ships had become 50, then 20, then 10. His perfect coordination had become perfect chaos, and the humans were using that chaos like a weapon. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the human fleet." General Stone's face appeared on the main screen. He was an older man with gray hair and cold eyes that had seen too many battles. "Commander Zexroth, this is General Marcus Stone of Earth Defense Command. I'm offering you one chance to surrender. You outnumber your forces 3-1, Zexroth replied, though. His voice shook. Stone smiled. "You mean you used to outnumber us 3-1? Look around, Commander. How many ships do you have left?" Zexroth checked his tactical display and felt his heart skip a beat. 8 ships. Out of 200, he had 8 ships remaining. "Is impossible. No species fights like this." "That's because you've never fought humans before. We don't just build armies, Commander. We build traps. We don't just make weapons, turn entire star systems into weapons. You came here expecting to fight farmers and miners. Instead, you found soldiers who've been waiting their whole lives for this fight." The remaining alien ships tried to retreat, but human vessels appeared from every direction. The trap had been decades in the making, and now it was closing. On Ceres, Dr. Clark watched the alien fleet's communication network collapse completely. "General, I'm inside their main command systems. I can see everything. Fleet positions, supply, lines, command structures. These guys have been running the galaxy for 3,000 years, but they've never faced an enemy that could hack their most basic systems. What else can you see, Tony?" "Everything, sir. And I mean everything. Troop movements, civilian populations, industrial capacity. If we wanted to, we could probably take apart their entire empire from the inside." General Stone considered this. The aliens had started this war by treating humans like animals to be captured and studied. They had destroyed colonies and taken prisoners. But they had also made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that humans would fight like every other species they had conquered. They had assumed that superior technology would guarantee victory. They had assumed that humans would surrender when faced with impossible odds. "Tony, I want you to send a message through their network. Not to their military command, but to every species in their empire. Show them what happened here. Show them that the Galactic Enforcement Division can be defeated. Sir, that could cause rebellions across their entire territory." Stone nodded. "These aliens have been running the galaxy like their personal playground for 3,000 years. Time to remind them that they're not the only intelligent species out here." As the last alien ships fled the Kepler system, Captain Hayes brought his flagship alongside Stone's command vessel. The 2 ships docked, and Hayes made his way to Stone's bridge. "General, we did it. We actually did it." Stone looked at the tactical display, showing the wreckage of the alien fleet. It was a victory, but he knew it was just the beginning. "We won this battle, but now the real war starts. They know we're not myths anymore. They know we can fight. Question is, what are they going to do about it?" Across the galaxy, alien species that had been conquered centuries ago received Clark's message. They saw the mighty Galactic Enforcement Division running from a species they had never heard of. They saw crystal ships burning and alien commanders surrendering for the first time in 3,000 years. The conquered peoples of the galaxy began to hope. The humans had done more than win a battle. It started a revolution. Supreme Commander Vexera had ruled the Galactic Empire for 200 years. In all that time, she had never known defeat. Her crystal palace orbited the capital world of Zenthari Prime, and from there she controlled 47 different star systems. Kings and queens of entire species bowed before her throne. Her word was law across half the galaxy. Today she was afraid. "How many ships?" she asked her war council, her voice echoing in the great chamber. "We have lost 400 vessels in the past month," reported General Kekstar, her military commander. His 4 arms shook as he spoke. "The humans appear everywhere at once. They strike our supply lines, attack our communication stations, and disappear before we can respond. Vexthera 6 eyes focused on the tactical display showing the current state of the war. Red markers indicated human attacks. There were hundreds of them, scattered across dozens of star systems. This is impossible. No species can coordinate attacks across such distances without using our communication network. Supreme Commander, said Advisor Kelthus, our intelligence suggests the humans have developed their own method of long-range communication. They do not need our network. Is there something else? General Kekstar continued. The humans are not fighting like any species we have encountered before. When we destroy one of their fleets, instead of retreating, more humans appear. When we capture their soldiers, they refuse to provide information, even under extreme interrogation. Vexathora stood and walked to the great window that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, creatures she had believed were myths were tearing apart her empire. What of the other species under our rule? Advisor Kelthus looked uncomfortable. There have been ... incidents. The Vorthon colonies have stopped sending their tribute payments. The crystalline hive has begun asking questions about self-governance. The Machine Collective has requested permission to evaluate their current political arrangements. Rebellion? It's not yet, Supreme Commander. But the humans have been broadcasting their victories across our communication network. Every species in the Empire has seen our ships burning. At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the Crystal Palace. Vexthara turned to see her communications officer running toward the throne room. Supreme Commander, we have human ships in the system. They appeared from nowhere, directly in front of our home fleet. How many ships? 12. Supreme Commander, Vexthara almost laughed. 12 ships dared to attack the capital system. Send the entire home fleet, destroy them all. But even as she gave the order, she felt a cold fear in her hearts. The humans had done impossible things before. Colonel Sam Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiance. Around him, his crew prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. They were about to attack the capital of the Galactic Empire with just 12 ships. Sir, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Jenny Brooks, we're detecting over 300 enemy vessels moving to intercept us. Rodriguez smiled. He was a small man with dark hair and quick eyes, but his crew would follow him anywhere. They had fought together through 20 battles, and they trusted him completely. Jenny, remember what General Stone always says? It's not about having the biggest fleet. It's about being in the right place at the right time with the right plan. Sir, what's the plan? Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. The alien home fleet was moving toward them in perfect formation, just as they always did. Beautiful, organized, and completely predictable. We're going to do something no sane military commander would ever do. We're going to charge directly at their flagship. His crew looked at him like he had lost his mind. Lieutenant Carl Manning, his weapons officer, spoke up. Sir, that ship is 10 times larger than anything we have. Their weapons could destroy us before we get within firing range. It's what they think too, Carl. That's why it's going to work. The Defiance and her 11 sister ships accelerated toward the center of the alien formation. Every military textbook ever written said this was suicide. Smaller ships should stay at range and use hit-and-run tactics. Should never charge directly at a larger enemy. Rodriguez had thrown all the textbooks out the airlock years ago. Sir, Jenny reported the enemy fleet is moving to surround us. They're trying to trap us in a crossfire. Perfect. Signal the fleet. Execute maneuver. 7. The 12 human ships suddenly split apart, but instead of spreading out to avoid the crossfire, they did something unexpected. 6 ships dove below the alien formation, while 6 others climbed above it. Then, at the last second, all 12 ships turned and charged directly at the alien. Flagship from different angles, the alien gunners tried to track 12 different targets moving in 12 different directions. Their perfect coordination became a weakness, as ships fired at targets their allies were also shooting at, while other human ships flew through gaps in their defensive fire. Now, Carl, give them everything we have. The Defiant struck the alien flagship like a missile. But instead of trying to destroy the massive ship, Rodriguez had a different plan. He rammed his ship directly into the flagship's docking bay and began boarding operations. All teams, go, go, go. We have maybe 10 minutes before their security forces organize. Rodriguez led his Marines through the corridors of the alien ship. The passageways were designed for beings larger than humans, which made movement easier, but also meant the humans could hide in spaces the aliens couldn't use. "Sir," called Sergeant Andy Torres, "I found her. The Supreme Commander is 3 levels up in what looks like a throne room." "How many guards? Maybe 50, sir?" "But they're not expecting us to be inside their ship." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Oh, there. About to learn that humans are really good at being places they're not supposed to be." The battle through the alien flagship was unlike anything in military history. Human Marines used tactics designed for fighting in cities and buildings, turning the ship's own corridors and chambers into a maze that confused their enemies. When the humans reached the throne room, they found Supreme Commander Vexthera surrounded by her guards. She was a magnificent creature, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with crystal-like skin that reflected light in beautiful patterns. Her 6 eyes showed intelligence and power. She also showed something Rodriguez had never seen in an alien before: fear. "I am Colonel Sam Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force," he said, pointing his weapon at her. "You are now my prisoner." "It is impossible," Vexthera replied. "No species has ever successfully boarded our capital ships. Yeah, well, humans are really good at doing impossible things. Sergeant Torres, secure the bridge. I want control of this ship's communication systems." As his Marines took control of the flagship, Rodriguez activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor of the massive vessel. "Attention, crew of this ship. This is Colonel Rodriguez. Your Supreme Commander is now under human protection. Any attempt to retake this ship will result in her immediate removal to one of our vessels. I suggest you think very carefully about your next actions." But Rodriguez wasn't just talking to the alien crew. Dr. Clark had given him access to the Empire's entire communication network. His words were being broadcast to every ship, every planet, every species under alien rule. "This message is for all the peoples of the galaxy. For 3,000 years you have been told that the Galactic Empire was invincible. You've been told that resistance was useless. You've been told that some species were born to rule, while others were born to serve." Rodriguez looked directly into the communication device, knowing that millions of beings across the galaxy were watching. "My name is Sam Rodriguez. I come from a species that was supposed to be a myth. I come from a world that was supposed to be impossible. And today, with 12 ships, we have captured the Supreme Commander of the Empire that has ruled you for 3 millennia." He paused, letting that sink in. "The Empire wants you to believe they are gods. But they bleed just like you do. They make mistakes just like you do. They feel fear just like you do. And right now, their Supreme Commander is my prisoner because she made the same mistake every bully makes. She thought that being strong meant she didn't have to be smart." Across the galaxy, the message was received by species that had forgotten what freedom looked like. On Vorthan Prime, workers in the crystal mines stopped their labor and looked up at the sky. On the crystalline hive worlds, the collective consciousness buzzed with new thoughts about independence. In the machine collective systems, artificial intelligences began calculating the probability of successful rebellion. Admiral D. Grace Mitchell watched the broadcast from her flagship as she led the main human fleet toward the capital system. She was a veteran of 30 years of space combat, and she had been preparing for this moment since the war began. Admiral reported, her communications officer, "We're receiving surrender requests from 17 different alien fleets. They don't want to fight anymore." Mitchell nodded. The capture of the Supreme Commander had broken something fundamental in the alien empire. But she also knew that some enemies would fight harder when cornered. What about their remaining military forces? About half are surrendering. The other half are regrouping for what looks like a final assault on Rodriguez's position. The war ended not with a great final battle, but with a conversation. Supreme Commander Vexthera sat in the holding cell aboard the human ship Defiance, watching her captors with growing fascination. For 3 weeks, she had been Colonel Rodriguez's prisoner, and in that time, She had learned more about humans than her species had discovered in 3,000 years of ruling the galaxy. The cell was comfortable, more like a guest room than a prison. The humans had given her access to books, entertainment, and even communication with her own people. They had also given her something she had never experienced before: time to think without the constant pressure of ruling an empire. "Colonel Rodriguez," she said when he arrived for their daily conversation, "I have a question that has been troubling me." Rodriguez sat down across from her. After weeks of these talks, he had come to respect the alien leader. She was intelligent, curious, and surprisingly willing to admit when she was wrong. "What's on your mind, Commander?" "Your species fights wars differently than any we have encountered. When we capture enemy soldiers, they provide information to save their own lives. When we destroy enemy fleets, the survivors surrender. When we conquer enemy worlds, the populations submit to our rule." Rodriguez nodded. "That sounds pretty normal to me. But humans do none of these things. Your soldiers refuse to talk even. Under extreme interrogation, your fleets fight until the last ship is destroyed. Your colonies resist even when facing certain death." Exthera, six eyes focused intently on Rodriguez. "Why do you choose to suffer when you could choose comfort?" Rodriguez thought about this for a moment. "Commander, can I tell you a story about my grandfather? Please do." "My grandfather was a farmer on Earth, back before we had space travel. There was a war, and enemy soldiers came to his village. They told all the farmers that if they grew food for the enemy army, they would be treated well. If they refused, they would be killed. A logical choice. Cooperation meant survival. That's what my grandfather's neighbors thought too. Them agreed to help the enemy, but my grandfather refused. Why would he choose death over life?" Rodriguez smiled. "Because he wasn't choosing between life and death. He was choosing between being a free man who might die and being a slave who might live. To him, there was no choice at all." Vexeta was quiet for a long moment, and this is why humans fight as they do. It's part of it, but there's something else. We don't just fight for ourselves. Fight for the idea that nobody should have. To choose between freedom and survival. When you attacked our colonies, you weren't just attacking humans. You were attacking that idea. I begin to understand. Your species does not see war as a competition between armies. You see it as a choice between different ways of living." Rodriguez nodded. "And once you understand that, you understand why. We can't surrender, because surrendering wouldn't just mean losing a war. It would mean admitting that freedom isn't worth fighting for." That evening, Vexera requested a meeting with all the senior human officers. Admiral Grace Mitchell had arrived with the main fleet, and General Marcus Stone had come from Earth to oversee the final negotiations. "I have made a decision," Vexeta announced to the assembled humans. "The Galactic Empire will surrender unconditionally to Earth." General Stone raised an eyebrow. "Commander, you should know that we're not interested in ruling your empire. We just want to be left alone. That is why I'm surrendering to you rather than negotiating a treaty. Any species that chooses freedom over empire can be trusted with power." Vexera looked at each of the human officers in turn. "But I have conditions." "Go ahead, Admiral," Mitchell said. "First, you must help us contact every species in our former empire. They should be given the choice to govern themselves, or to form new alliances based on mutual benefit rather than conquest." "Agreed," Stone said immediately. "Second, you must help us establish a new galactic council where all species have equal representation. No more rulers and subjects, only partners working together." "That sounds reasonable." "Third, and most important, you must promise to share your most dangerous weapon with every species in the galaxy." The humans looked confused. Colonel Rodriguez spoke up. "Commander, what weapon are you talking about? Our missiles? Our ships?" Vexera smiled, an expression that looked strange on her crystalline features. "Your ideas, Colonel. Freedom is worth more than safety. The idea that some things are worth dying for. The idea that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose to stand together." General Stone stood and extended his hand. "Commander, you have yourself a deal." 6 months later, representatives from over 200 different species gathered on a space station orbiting the former capital world. The Great Assembly, as it came to be known, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, instead of one species ruling over others. Every world had an equal voice in deciding their shared future. Captain Jake Morrison, recently promoted to admiral, stood before the assembly to deliver the opening address. After months of captivity, he had been rescued when Rodriguez captured the Supreme Commander. Now, he represented Earth in the new galactic government. Friends and allies, Morrison began. 6 months ago, most of you had never heard of humans. You knew us only as myths and legends. Today, we stand together as equals, united not by conquest, but by choice. The assembled representatives listened carefully. Many of them were still learning what it meant to govern themselves after thousands of years of being ruled by others. But I want to be clear about something. Humans did not win this war because we were stronger or smarter than our enemies. We won because we had something worth fighting for. Now all of you have that same thing. Admiral Morrison gestured to the great windows that showed the stars beyond. Out there is a galaxy full of wonders we haven't discovered yet. There are new worlds to explore, new friends to make, and new challenges to overcome. But we will face them together as free people choosing their own destiny. Dr. Lisa Warren, now head of the Interspecies Research Council, stood to address the assembly. Humans have a saying, give a person a fish, and they eat for a day. Teach them to fish, and they eat for life. We don't want to give you freedom. We want to teach you how to keep it. Former Supreme Commander Vexera, now serving as an advisor to the new council, added her own thoughts. For 3,000 years, my people believed that order required hierarchy, that peace required submission, that safety required surrender of choice. The humans have taught us that true order comes from cooperation. True peace comes from justice. And true safety comes from people who are willing to defend what they believe in. Colonel Sam Rodriguez, now General Rodriguez and head of the new Galactic Defense Force, outlined the military structure of their alliance. Every species will contribute what they can to our shared defense. But understand this, we are not building an army to conquer others. We are building a force to protect the right of every world to choose its own path. Captain Helen Brooks, promoted to Admiral Brooks and commander of the Colonial Defense Division, spoke about expansion. As we explore new regions of space, we will encounter other species. Some may be friendly, others may be hostile, but our goal will always be the same: to offer friendship to those who want it, and to defend ourselves against those who would take our freedom. The Assembly voted to establish the new government with unanimous support. For the first time in galactic history, every species had chosen their leaders instead of having leaders imposed on them, as the ceremony concluded. Admiral Morrison found himself standing beside Vexera, looking out at the stars. Commander, do you ever regret how things turned out? Vexera considered this carefully. Admiral, for 200 years, I wielded absolute power over billions of beings. I could destroy worlds with a word, create or end lives on a whim. I thought that made me strong, and now I understand that true strength comes not from the power to control others, but from the wisdom to control yourself. Your species taught the galaxy something we had forgotten, that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies, but turning them into friends. Morrison nodded. The galaxy is going to be a very different place from now on. Yes, Vexera agreed. It will be better. Years later, when historians wrote about the human war, they struggled to explain how a species that had been considered mythical managed to defeat the greatest empire in galactic history. The humans had no technological advantages. They were outnumbered by millions to one, controlled only a tiny fraction of known space. But they had something their enemies had never encountered before. The absolute refusal to accept that freedom was negotiable. The war had started because the Galactic Empire believed humans were myths. It ended because humans proved that some myths were prophecies waiting to come true. In the end, the galaxy learned that the most dangerous weapon in the universe was not a ship or a bomb or a laser. It was an idea. The idea that ordinary people could choose to do extraordinary things. The idea that freedom was worth any price. The idea that no one had the right to rule over others without their consent. And once that idea started spreading, No empire in the galaxy could stop it. The humans had kept their promise. They had taught the galaxy how to fish.